chat people are doing. So now you see, yes, I know I've been a little busy these last, I think 2 weeks. 2 weeks after May, I think. Yeah, 2 weeks. There's been a whole bunch of stuff to take care of. But now, to be completely fair, there's not really a lot of videos for me to make. I've basically made most of them. This year has been fairly nice for me in terms of YouTube, at least. But here's the deal: with these two devices, it's particularly interesting because they have very different approaches. They're fantastic in terms of cameras and especially for video quality and so on and so forth. I'm sure it's great, but you see, the X100 more than likely it's got a tendency to go for features and for essentially an approach that is more tailored towards regular consumers as opposed to pro level consumers who might be maybe more interested in things that are more flexible, like the log video on the Shine for Ultra, like the Master Cinema mode. And you'll see soon enough why that is particularly enticing for me, but it may not be the case for you. That's kind of the situation here. So you're really gonna have to decide what exactly you want. Alright, so here's the deal with the selfie videos in particular. You see, the Xiaomi is good, no doubt about that. It's 4K 30, you can go up to 4K 60, that's great, but just like with the X100 Pro before this, the X100 Ultra is still by far one of the absolute best when it comes to selfie video, mainly because of just the kind of processing that Vivo has done. It's weird that somehow it is so good at this, but the detail preservation and the noise reduction, those two things are by far some of the highest quality that I've seen. I don't think even the iPhone comes anywhere close to what the X100 Pro or the X100 Ultra can achieve in terms of the quality of the video. It's really something else. And then of course with the microphones, I'd say they are taking different approaches. The quality is overall, objectively speaking, very good on both, but I do think that the X100 Ultra's approach with regards to not reducing all the noise in the background and keeping some of it in for the sake of not muffling my voice, that's actually a better approach in my opinion, as opposed to the Xiaomi, which yes, it has technically more clarity because it is reducing all the background noise, but I do feel like my voice wasn't quite as clear as the X100. And then of course rear camera 4K 30. Now, the setting here is a little bit different, mainly because unlike most of the other videos that I've ever made, especially with video comparisons, over here, what we're looking at is a literal ship. I'm on a ship, I'm just shooting videos over here. This is the Queen Elizabeth ship that's been turned into an entire hotel, and well, there was this art exhibition happening, I came to know about it, as you would, and well, I didn't participate, but I did realize that this is about as fantastic of a location to take a video comparison. And well, that's exactly what we did. Now, in terms of 4K 30, I think it should be more than obvious. You're not going to have any issues with either of these, mainly because it's the most basic mode and it's something that basically every single smartphone can do. But more than that, I think both are very similar, and I think perhaps the X100 Ultra has just a tiny bit more stabilization happening. A little bit better, just a very small difference, something I noticed only after watching it 2 to 3 times. But then with the ultrawide camera, just as you would expect, very low differences, and yes, the Xiaomi's ultrawide camera is way wider as opposed to anything the X100 Ultra can have. But I do think that this time the white balance is actually a little too cooled off on the Shine 400 Ultra as opposed to what the X100 is producing, which I think is the more accurate look that we were supposed to have. And then of course the versatility side of things. See, here's the deal. The X100 Ultra, it has only a 3.7x zoom, and for photography, with the way the processing works, it works out more than well enough. But when you're thinking about videos, you really need the optical zooms like the Xiaomi 14 Ultra has. And so because of that, I think it just inherently has a disadvantage. But then of course with the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, yes, the 3x and the 5x, it is really nice to have. And even though the lighting here isn't particularly perfect or all that great, to be entirely honest, because this is all indoors lighting that I'm shooting in, it can still produce more than well enough detail with both the 3x and the 5x. And if you're looking for a highly versatile camera, well then this is really the only way to go. But then speaking of versatility, my absolute favorite mode on just about any smartphone except for the ProRes log that we get from the iPhones is Master Cinema on the Shine 400 Ultra. It is so versatile. It is such a beautiful thing to have. You can color grade it to all the way to high heaven and back. And it's also very easy to handle with the way it works and with the color space that it uses. I think it's the Rec 2020 color space that it has. And it looks good. Like, this is a very challenging situation that I'm then grading all the way. And the image holds up. There's no artifacting, there's no weird color banding or anything like that. It just works out well enough But then the Xiaomi goes another step further with log video. Now the problem with log video, unlike Master Cinema, is that it doesn't have very good stabilization. I mean, you can probably tell even without a color grade, it's got some problems with stabilization. It's got a lot of jerks happening, and I'm holding the camera with both my hands and it's still not quite able to give you good stabilization. But just as you would expect, color grading log video is an absolute pleasure. I mean, the Xiaomi just works. The jitters, they do bother me a lot. The fact that I cannot walk around with it and I cannot take regular videos with it, it really is not cool at all. But man, the colors look nice, you know. I was able to grade it all the way I wanted. I didn't have to pull back or I didn't need to hold back at all. It works out really nice, no doubt about that. But man, that stabilization bothers me so very much. And then of course HDR video, more specifically Dolby Vision video. It is something both phones can do. I really wish the X100 Ultra, given that it's an Ultra device, it went for more professionally oriented modes like the log video mode, or even something similar to Master Cinema would have been kind of nice to have, but well, there's nothing as such. But of course, with the Dolby Vision, I'd say both are looking fairly nice, but I do think that the X100 Ultra just has better contrast and it just looks a little bit nicer. This is of course after transcoding it to SDR, but look, here's the deal. It's not something you can actually do on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. This is more of an approximation. I use color space transform. For those of you who know, you know. But yeah, that's something you can do on DaVinci Resolve, and essentially it gave us an approximation of how the SDR is supposed to look when you use the Dolby Vision footage from the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. But the problem is this, we should be able to do this in the smartphone itself. But then of course moving right along to 4K 60. Now 4K 60 looks kind of nice on both phones, no doubt about that. And I mean, you can tell this is again not exactly very ideal lighting conditions. It's not particularly bright, nor is it particularly evenly lit, but I think both phones are just handling it tremendously well. However, I do believe that in this particular case, the Xiaomi is handling the dynamic range better than the X100, because a lot of the areas where we just had subjects lit with a white light, it appears a little too warm on the X100 Ultra, and that's not exactly accurate, now is it? And then of course we have the Ultrawide 4K 60. Now this was challenging because, as you can tell, not a lot of lights were particularly turned on at this point in time, and so this is quite a stress test right there. And this really drives home the point. Yes, the Xiaomi 14 Ultra has a wider field of view. Yes, that's great for an ultrawide camera, but it also appears to be very obviously lower in quality as opposed to the X100 Ultra. Which, yes, it's less of an ultrawide camera, but it does produce better quality, so it is an interesting situation that we have here. However, of course, if you know for a fact that you're never gonna shoot in semi-low light or in just uneven lighting in general, well then the Xiaomi would more than likely serve you better, at least in terms of ultrawide cameras. Then moving on, of course, we have 8K video on both of these. Now, the X100 Ultra's 8K is actually really good. It's got tremendous stabilization. That, however, is not entirely the case on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. And this is mostly true with the main cameras, and that's what bothers me so much, because you can probably tell the amount of jerks that we're getting with the 8K on the Xiaomi, it really just doesn't make it all that usable as an alternative to 4K 30. On the X100, that's quite the opposite. Yes, it is true that the X100 Ultra, unlike the Xiaomi, doesn't really give you the versatility with 8K. You can't use ultrawide 8K like we're using right now. And yes, ultrawide 8K does have really good stabilization on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. But the fact that the main camera works properly and you can utilize it as a genuine alternative to regular 4K 30, well, that it kind of sells itself, doesn't it? And I guess the same can be said for both 3x and 5x 8K that the Xiaomi does provide. There's no doubt about that, and it's great. But think about it, how many times is anyone really going to utilize a zoom camera with 8K? Wouldn't it make more sense to have proper high quality stable 8K video from the main camera first, instead of focusing on the zoom cameras? That would have been the preference or the priority, right? And then of course moving right along to super stable video. Now here's the deal. You see, the super stable video on the X100 Ultra, it has seen a major upgrade. We are finally getting 2.8K resolution with super stable. Especially with the main camera, the detail preservation is staggeringly high as opposed to anything the Xiaomi can produce. Now in terms of stabilization, that too is better on the X100 Ultra, which is not something I expected. I thought that would be similar, but the detail preservation would be better because, you know, high resolution and just in general high quality video that you're getting. But no, it's just blatantly, flatly better as opposed to the Xiaomi 14 Ultra super stable. So that's quite something. And the exact same stays true for the ultra wide camera as well, because yes, once again, the Xiaomi's ultra-wide field of view is good, but the detail level, the quality of the video, the amount of noise that we have, and also the stabilization, it's just all equally worse as opposed to the X100 Ultra, which is unfortunate, but well, it's definitely something that the Xiaomi can improve upon, and it's something I'm looking forward to. Moving on, however, to the coveted details test. Now, this is usually my favorite part of the video, but in this case, it's going to be particularly interesting because with the main camera, as you can probably tell, both are actually very close. If anything at all, the Xiaomi is the one producing more detail as opposed to the X100 Ultra. So technically speaking, the Xiaomi's main camera video is going to be more detailed, right? That's great. There's a very good reason I'm saying it in that manner, but we'll get to that. First and foremost, 8K video with the main camera once again. I think it's going to be very similar. And it is. It is very, very similar across the board. It's kind of expected at this point, but I do think that perhaps the X100 has a little bit more sharpening going on. It's sharpening, not exactly detail preservation, but I think it kind of helps. Now with the ultra-wide camera, well look, the field of view problem is always going to be here. Even though I tried to adjust it, it clearly didn't work out for me. But zooming in all the way to 500%, as you can tell, the X100 Ultra does have way less grain, and that's kind of the same thing we saw with the regular videos as well. But of course, that's not where the Xiaomi stops, does it? Because it does give you 8K. Now here's the deal. The 8K video is very usable on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra's ultra-wide camera because of the stabilization. But the problem is, the detail preservation on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra's 8K ultra-wide is not that good. I mean, I feel like the 4K looked better, sharper, and less grainy as opposed to what we're getting with 8K, so why even use it? That's kind of the whole point here. And then this one, see, this is where it gets interesting. Now, I get it, 3x, 8K and all that jazz, it's great. But what I'm interested in is the fact that the Xiaomi 14 Ultra has a 5x and it can do 8K, while the X100 Ultra, it has one of the highest quality 3.7x camera. Any telephoto camera that I've ever used, the X100 Ultra's quality is by far the absolute highest, and there's really nothing else quite like it. So here's my question. Will the X100 Ultra's raw quality with the sensor that it has, it's just 4K, will it be able to keep up with the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, which has an optical zoom advantage first and foremost with the 5x, and also a resolution advantage with the 8K? Will it be able to keep up with that? That's kind of the situation here. That's what I'm curious about. And well, zooming in all the way, with 4K and just a 3.7x optical zoom, it is able to produce more detail and less grain and less artifacting and less smearing as opposed to the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, which should have been at the absolute and complete advantage in this particular case. So it really goes to show what hardware is capable of. And then finally we have night mode video. Now night mode video in particular is a feature that we have on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. The X100 Ultra on the other hand doesn't really give us anything like that, but for the most part it looks fairly nice. I do think it's kind of maybe lacking in a little bit of contrast in some of the areas. It looks a little smeared up in some of the shadows, but what you might have noticed is that the Xiaomi 14 Ultra's stabilization, it's bad. It's really, really bad. And also I think the highlight preservation is slightly better on the X100 Ultra. So overall it is doing a really good job. Now one other thing that I feel the Xiaomi 14 Ultra has an advantage in is grain and noise reduction. Mainly because it is using the night mode video, so it's kind of processing for that. But with that said, let's move on to slow motion, because I think this is where things will be getting interesting without a doubt. Mainly because we have two different slow-mos. This is 1080p 240, and that's great. It works really well, especially if you want to capture something in really good slow motion. This is the way to go. As you can tell, quality looks fantastic on both. There's no doubt about that. I think the detail preservation is actually a little bit higher on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, but it's a very, very minor difference at all. But believe me when I say that's not something we care about. Well, at least it's not something I care about, because 1080p 240 is old news. What we have is 4K 120, finally, on a Vivo flagship. It took a while. It took way too damn long, but it's finally here. But my problem is this. It could be because the Xiaomi 14 Ultra just has higher contrast, but it just appears to have so much more detail and so much more clarity as opposed to the X100 Ultra. And let's not dilute the importance of perception, because let's face it, if you perceive more detail and you don't want to pixel peep and really figure out if it is more detail or more contrast, well then there is more detail. Who's to say you're wrong? It's just like that. And so here's the deal with both of these devices. Now personally for me, because I'm a tech YouTuber and because I like to shoot content, I like to edit my videos, and I like to basically color grade my videos all the way to high heaven and back, as you can probably tell. Well, the Xiaomi 14 Ultra is a very obvious pick for me, especially with Master Cinema, which basically has none of the problems of log video, from the Xiaomi 14 Ultra itself with the stabilization, but it also gives you almost just as much flexibility. I mean, it's a no-brainer for me. But if you're not interested in that, then I think the X100 Ultra really stacks up as opposed to the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, especially with that 3.7x. Like, yeah, if you are really interested in telephoto, well then I'm pretty sure the X100 Ultra just sold itself, even with videos. That's how good it is. That's how good the processing is, and that's how capable the processing is of taking advantage of the hardware, which is already fantastic on the X100 Ultra. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed, found this helpful. I'll see you guys soon enough with perhaps maybe 1 or 2 more videos until the next one comes out, because there's not a lot to do. Cheers.